With the holidays behind us and the year about to come to a close, the Daytona 500 is inching closer and closer, now being just a little over 2 months away. Now, the Daytona 500 entry list has definitely not been fully confirmed yet, and in today's video I'm going to be speculating over more of the entries for 2024. Starting off with the Money Team. It has been recently announced that the Money Team Racing is planning to field a car in up to 8 races in 2024, and as expected, they would probably want to be in the Daytona 500, a race that they have made the past 2 years, making it in their first attempt ever in 2022 with Kaz Grala, and then getting lucky and making the show again in 2023 with Connor Daly. Now, for next year, they have no confirmed driver yet, and with the rumors of Kaz Grala going to Rick Ware Racing, he's probably out of the picture. Now, do I think they could bring Connor Daly back? Yeah, probably. They were seeming to want to push him into NASCAR a bit last year, as they got him into both the Daytona 500 and the race at Circuit of the Americas. Now, that's the only possibility that instantly comes to mind, but they could always bring someone up from one of the lower series that's been wanting to get up into NASCAR, and, they could give more experience. Now, we won't see, Austin Hill in the 62 this year, as it was recently announced that Anthony Alfredo will be driving that car. So that took up one more spot on the entry list. Now, they could put Austin Hill in the 50 car, as he's a Chevy driver, and unless Richard Childress Racing enters the 33 into the Daytona 500, then I don't see Austin Hill making an attempt like he did in 2022. Now, another team that's been floating around is NY Racing, a team that's been on and off racing in NASCAR for a while now. Now, the last time we saw them was in 2022, when they brought back Greg Biffle from retirement and made the Daytona 500 with him. Unfortunately, mechanical issues would send him way down the leaderboard, and everybody thought he was out. He did come back, he did finish the race on track, and they did get a top 20 at Atlanta with Biffle as well, and entered 3 other races that season. They were expected to show up in 2023, and we did not see them, and now it's been floating around that NY Racing will return for the 2024 season. Now, will they bring Greg Biffle back? I don't know. Greg Biffle's getting older, but he can still drive a race car, and he can still finish the race, provided the equipment allows him to, as NY Racing seemed to have one of those, back marker start and park feels to it, as the car would routinely have mechanical issues, only not having an issue like that at Atlanta. Whereas I mentioned, Greg Biffle had his strongest run of the year, and in one of those races, he even led a lap. So will NY Racing bring Biffle back for the Daytona 500? It's very possible, and I think we could see it. Now, other drivers, again, they could probably, because they're more of a backmarker organization, slower cars than Rick Ware and even the Money Team, they could probably afford to, bring up one of the Xfinity or truck drivers that, has no experience yet and is trying to move up the ladder. And I apologize if you hear noise, people yelling. That's my siblings, and there's also cars. They're here, but NY Racing is an interesting one because we really don't know. We really don't know what their plans are yet. They haven't made an official announcement. They haven't talked about any drivers as far as I know. If I find anything, I'll put it up on screen, probably. But that's another interesting one, and with the return of those 2 teams, I believe that would put the entry list up to 42, as multiple other entries have already been confirmed, such as BM Motorsports with Anthony Alfredo, BJ McLeod in the 78 for Live Fast, and there was one other team as well that for some reason has slipped my mind momentarily. Another one that's kind of been floating around, Rick Ware Racing. They used to enter 4-5 cars back in the day. And, if the rumors are true that they're going to have 2 full-time drivers next year, I'm sure they'd want JJ Yaley to still have a chance to drive for them a bit. Because right now, it's looking like either we'll have Haley and Grala full-time, or we'll have Haley and an all-star car, which, if you've watched other NASCAR YouTubers recently, such as The Iceberg, he's talked about, he and Eric Eastep have both talked about how that all-star car is kind of good for Rick Ware Racing. In 2023, we saw Yaley score a top 10 in it. We saw them bring in Ryan Newman back to Cup, and Homestead was he had a strong run compared to his other races in both the Xfinity and Cup race at Homestead. They had Cole Custer back in the car, and remember, that's where Cole Custer got his Cup start, was with Rick Ware Racing before he came over to SHR. So they were bringing in a lot of drivers, Andy Lally on the road courses. So I think if they keep that all-star car, they'll be good. And that is a locked-in car, but because of NASCAR choosing not to repossess the charter. But I thought I'd bring it up because we really don't know yet. Well, actually, no, I forgot. Where I was going with that was the third car that they could enter. But one more thing about the all-star car is they had Riley Herbst, and we'll get back to Riley Herbst later. But if they were to enter a third car, especially presuming they do take Kaz Grala full-time, sign him onto a full-time deal, definitely, as I mentioned earlier, would take him away as an option for the money team, but would give him another chance. He's made the Daytona 500 before, and if they sign him on full-time, he's locked in anyway. But they do choose to enter a third car. With Kaz Grala driving the other one, I definitely could see either JJ Yaley or Riley Herbst being the driver that's thrown in there. No one else, really. And if they're running two all-star cars, with the third entry being a possibility for the Daytona 500, then I think you could easily throw Yaley in one, Herbst in the other, assuming Herbst doesn't go to Front Row Motorsports for a race, which is what I was going to get to next. Now, unless I'm remembering wrong and my brain isn't working well the day after Christmas, there's not a confirmed entry for the 36 yet, which is a car that we saw Riley Herbst run in 2023 at the super speedways after making a few starts with Rick Ware Racing, getting a top 10 in his Cup debut in the Daytona 500, which is exactly why I think we should see him come back and run either in an open car or in a chartered car like he did last year. Moving on from Front Row Motorsports, because I don't know who else they'd really put in that car besides Riley Herbst or... Yeah, they definitely... Yeah, okay. For a second I was like, did they put Herbst in that car? And then I remembered, yeah, they did. Other than that, I don't really know who they'd throw in that car. So going on to Colleague Racing, that's another interesting one. They fielded the 13 for Chandler Smith multiple times throughout 2023. Bringing that 13 car back, something we haven't seen much since Germain Racing left. Of course, we saw Garrett Smithley attempt it, the Daytona 500 in the 13 a few years ago. But it's cool to see them bringing the 13 back. And for that entry, I'd expect Chandler Smith again. Or, actually, no, never mind, not Chandler Smith. He's been linked to Toyota, and I think my brain's fried, but I believe he was already confirmed to a JGR. Don't be mad at me if I forgot. I'm just not remembering everything today. So probably not Chandler Smith. Shane Van Gisbergen, I don't believe he was ever confirmed, but he's already running 2 Daytona races that weekend. Of course, we'll get to see Shane Van Gisbergen hit the super speedways in an ARCA car, which will be fun to watch. That'll probably bring in some extra viewers to ARCA, which has heavily suffered with mainly low car counts, but Daytona is probably one of my favorite ARCA races of the year. I watched it this year, and it was good. Greg Van Alst pulling off that win was a really good story. And so that'll be fun to watch Shane Van Gisbergen there, but he's also signed on with Colleague in the Xfinity Series. So I feel like although he's already had confirmed races with, Trackhouse, the 7 confirmed Cup races, I wonder if Colleague will throw him up into the 13 for a few races throughout the year as well. Now, another one that I haven't heard so much about, MBM Motorsports, is Carl Long's team. Now, remember, the last time we saw them in the Cup Series was in the first year of this next-gen era in 2022, when they attempted to make the Daytona 500 with the 55 and 66 cars, JJ Yaley and Timmy Hill respectively, and unfortunately neither of them made it. Yaley was about to make the race, and then Kaz Grala, who I mentioned it multiple times earlier, ended up passing him on the final lap and making it into the show. They brought the cars back a few more times. Yaley ran the 55 at Talladega. We saw Boris Said in the car at COTA. But since then, they've been kind of silent on the Cup side. However, I did hear at points throughout 2023 that MBM does indeed have Cup cars still at the shop, and that they could come back. So, of course, if they do, I would definitely expect Timmy Hill in the car, or if Yaley doesn't end up with RWR like he's expected to, they could try with Yaley again. Carl Long is a huge long shot. I don't think we're gonna see him in the car unless he really wants to like see how it feels to drive the next gen car. And I don't really know who else they could throw in there. Maybe one of their other Xfinity drivers that they've employed throughout the last year and 2 years, because since they've been absent from Cup, because they were only in a few early Cup races in 2022. So that's another long shot. We could always see some other team show up that we haven't seen in a while, or really any team could throw in an extra entry. What was it? I heard, I mentioned it earlier. Richard Childress Racing could put another entry in. Of course, we had 2311 last year. And then how did I forget until 11 minutes in, Jimmy Johnson, we're all expecting him to return with his 84 and make the race again, hopefully, because that was definitely his strongest run of the year. And he would have had a pretty good finish out of it if he hadn't crashed at the end. He was running up front. He was scoring stage points. And then unfortunately got wrapped up in a big wreck. So Jimmy should be on the entry list. Of course, the 67 could return. Last year we saw Travis Pastrana make it in to the race in the 67, and he performed really well for his Cup debut especially. And then also Kamui Kobayashi at Indianapolis, and we could definitely see Pastrana come back. That was a big story. Fans are probably going to be floating around Carl Edwards' name, because, everybody wants to see Carl Edwards come back, and if there was one team he would come back with, it would probably be that one. But that's another big long shot, but that would probably be one of the biggest stories. That's about all I can think of off the top of my head right now. So we could have a decently large entry list, assuming a lot of cars show up. There are 40, I believe there's 40 confirmed right now. Throw in some of those other teams, we could get up to 45, 46, maybe even more. So yeah, that's my speculation for the Daytona 500 next year. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.